Hey, Alex, will you join me?
No,
Just
I
say
won't
yes.
join your pyramid
Ah,
scheme.
I need your will. I need
Never.
it. I need to get swole. Give me your will.
And with that unwilling introduction, uh, welcome to this month's episode of the 800s. I am your co-host Ax, and you just heard from my what would it be? Septimus, Adam, and to our Octavius in the background. Just kidding. He's more like the Sextus. Bang. Um,
Heyo.
Alan, for thank you for making this happen. Oh yeah, beefcake. All right. So with
That
that,
was
let's quick to our top of the morning, top of the evening plugs, so
yeah.
we can get into talking about this book.
We're off to a great start tonight. Feeling
Yeah,
real fresh.
clearly.
We've been seating too long. We're just sapped of all energy. Anyway, this is the 800s. If this is the plugs, yes. If you, God damn it. We're the DM's table. If you would like to know more about us, visit dmstable.com. There are some links below the video that you could check out too if you want to find out more about us. If you heard some music before our beautiful faces showed up, that was Feel Is First by Incompetech. You should check out everything they have to offer at incompetech.filmmusic.io. Otherwise, we'll fill you in on more stuff at the end of the show, so keep tuned if you want to know more about us and all of our various linkages and things.
All right, so this month on the 800s, we'll be discussing our Ides of March or political intrigue book, The Will of the Many by James Islington or Islington. We still have no conclusive answer to that because two separate narrators pronounced it two separate ways on the audiobook. Anywho, Stronger together, words used by the contending republic to unite the people and to justify the hierarchy, a system where those at the bottom cede their very life force or will to those above them. This, secretly a prince of a conquered nation, we're doing good here, folks, hides from both the republic and who would see him hanged and the system of power that dominates the world around him. His time is running out as he is about to turn 18 and will be forced to join the hierarchy whether he likes it or not. When suddenly an opportunity and a burden is thrust upon him in the form of Magnus Quintus Ulquiscor. This is to join a school of elites to investigate the murder of his new patron's brother while avoiding exposure of his past in a minefield of political and personal traps. Surrounded by the best and brightest and most well connected of his age, Viz comes to discover what it really means to know the will of the many.
If this is your first time joining us for the 800s, first off, welcome. Let me give you a rundown of how our show works. We are a discussion show. What that means is Alex or myself will pose a topic or question to discuss. We will give our opinions on it, and then we'll check out chat to see what you guys think. At any time, if you have something you would like to discuss about the book, feel free to throw it in chat. And of course, don't forget to give your opinion about what we're currently talking about in the chat as well. And if you say something cool like words and stuff, we will totally give you a shout out. That's it. This show is better together.
Stronger, not stronger together. Also, this is a show that is geared towards adults and adult content most of the time, so we do cover those things. And while we try not to swear all the time, it does fucking happen. So bring kids around at your own discretion. Uh, Also, we're trying to create a fun and supportive environment over at DM Staple where people can feel free to nerd out, geek out, freak out about all the things that they love without any fear of any sort of judgment or belittlement. So, in some, our words, be nice or fuck us office.
Yeah, we don't judge you guys. We just judge whoever writes books.
Yeah. All right. So with that,
Speak Speaking of judging, let's let's get to the judgment of how this book started. What were your first thoughts of The Will of the Many?
um, I'm gonna say this once at the top, and I'm gonna try to leave it there. This book starts off a little too like the one that we just read, not to make at least something of a comparison, but where it's the person who is in a land that is not their own and to some degree knows it. And it was a lot of the vibes were the same of trying to figure out my way through this world, but this one drew me in a lot more because none of the tension felt forced. It felt very realistic. Um, from the jump, I have an idea of what our main character is like, but I want to get to know more about him and the world around him. And the way that things are introduced by showing less than telling felt compelling going into this book. Uh, and it does feel like the world is huge right from the get go, but it feels very understandable. Part of it is just my own familiarity with how like Roman culture worked and how deeply based off of that this is. But which is a choice that authors can make. And I noticed that Islington kind of used that backdrop as a means to let you kind of fill in the gaps, and then he corrects them as you go and tells you what's different rather than having to explain literally every tiny thing from the ground up. And immediately you get a feel for the fact that the magic system has a big impact on the world, and there's enough mystery for me to want to get to know it. So again, from the beginning, this book was just like, I want to know more, which could have been all it was, but then there's also a decent plot right out the gate from the beginning too. So that was, it felt very easy to slip into this book and be carried along with it. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, right from the prison scene, we get that sense of like there's that great metaphor, I think, in the prison scene where we get a feeling for how the world is going to be set, where like
Mhm,
everybody's being effectively tortured, but from the outward appearance, they're not being tortured at all. And
mhm.
it's like I felt like that was a great way to say like shit's going on beneath the surface that you might not see right away without saying shit's going on beneath the surface that you might not see right away. um, is to kind of give you that premise of, oh, this seems like a regular jail, but there's just this mystery element to what the heck is a sapper, and um why why is everything so tense? Why is this character afraid of the visitor finding out who he really is, and um why is he hiding how long he's been there, you know? There's a whole lot that the intro scene says about the intrigue that we should expect from the book moving forward.
Mhm.
And if there's one thing I can say about Islington's skills from the get-go is he knows how to set a scene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to your point, which I think is you set up beautifully, is not only do you get a feel for like what's going on underneath the scenes, but that also gives you an idea of what our main character is fighting against. It's not just big empire evil. You see from the ground up why it's evil. Like there's something terrible about it. And yeah, we don't know everything about it, but it makes his disdain for it more than just they conquered my homeland. It is they conquered my homeland and set up a system that is deeply oppressive and literally saps the life out of most people. And it's not just a personal vendetta, and it also sets up kind of like this moral foundation for our main character as well by saying he won't be a part of it and why.
Yeah. Via Strake says the book introduced the character wonderfully and it showed how to freaking do it. Uh, yeah. I don't have a deep ancient Roman culture knowledge, and it was so understandable. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I want to call that comment out is I also don't like, I've got the history knowledge of ancient Rome and all that, but I don't know much about the culture of Roman society, and I didn't feel like I was buried underneath a mountain of lack of knowledge with this book. It felt, I should have said pyramid. I was buried underneath a pyramid of lack of knowledge with this book. um, but no, it was, everything was explained without making it like the author was just sitting there explaining shit to us. Like that didn't
Yeah.
really happen. So it was good.
And that's good to know, because I do have that slightly deeper knowledge that I didn't think it was alleviating so much that you had to have that knowledge to move on, but it did allow me to focus on other things. When I saw that, I was just like, oh, this is clearly how it's set up. I know that's how that works. And I could just divert my attention to other things within the book, and I wasn't missing anything either. But part of the reason why that works is because the hierarchy itself is a very understandable system as far as like visualizing it, you know,
Yeah.
in context, and making that easy to digest regardless of your background is a subtle line to walk, which, well done.
Yeah.
Right. So
So what did you think of the what were the Anguis?
are you
Ang-
talking about the rebellion? Because that would be the Anguis.
Yes. What did you think of the Anguis's actions in this book, and how did it play as how do you think it played out as the opposition to the ruling government?
um I liked it in the fact that the Anguis, there's a lot of books out there that kind of set up a bit of a dichotomy when it comes to there's the oppressive rule and then there's the justified rebellion. And it makes it seem like those are the only two factions to be a part of. And the Anguis being just as bad in a different way, in the way that they view stuff, at least from the perspective of our main character, does make sense. Is like just because you know somebody doesn't mean you necessarily agree with why they're doing stuff or how they're going about things. And I liked that the main character got a chance to again set up like this is the kind of person that I am, regardless of the naivety of it or not. Depends on perspective there as well. But I, I like that it was treated as a complex entity and not just like this inherent opposition. You know, the actions they took made sense in the scope of what we know to just be a resistance. There's clearly more going on within it because we see a distinct difference between the leadership and those at the bottom. And I think that it is setting up something that was supposed to come later, but also creates a different source of tension, which again, it was nice seeing that the tension is not just like unidirectional, like between 2 points. It's a character being pulled in several different directions that kind of lead in the same direction, but not really. And for something that was a political intrigue themed book, I thought that was a nice touch, you know.
Yeah.
Super
No, I
fucked
love.
up where they killed 30,000 people, like just exploding them. But yeah. But anyways, go
No,
ahead.
I love that you mentioned that because like that was my big takeaway from the Anguis is how our main character, Vis, was like, listen, I don't like them, but I'm not gonna murder people. And they were like, well, we're gonna fucking murder people. uh, I liked that indecision on Vis's behalf, where he was like, I want to fight back. They're not doing it the way I want to do it, and I don't know what to do, and I'm just gonna sit back and think about it for now, and maybe I'll come up with something later. Um, that's something that a lot of times the opposition to the ruling government exists for the main character to join, and this the Anguis stood apart enough to be their own entity, not just in existence for the main character, which I think is really important to a dynamic story that's not just all about the main character. So I thought they played out really well, and I liked that they were way more ruthless than what Vis was willing to be, and that they had their own plots and wouldn't just sit back and wait for Vis to do shit. Yeah.
I also like that I like that you bring that up because I also like the fact that they had a pretty clear like MO and reasoning, quote unquote, behind what they're doing and why. Is their reasoning is anybody who joins the hierarchy has either explicitly or tacitly accepted a system that is what they believe to be dangerous and oppressive. And it is dangerous and oppressive, but their line about, if you agree to do this because a part of the mechanism of will is it has to be given willingly. Saying and I like that it shows that they have a line that is easily digestible for those at the bottom and makes like a certain kind of sense, but they also have a main character that's willing to call, well, not just the main character, but the people are willing to call him out and say that's kind of bullshit because like the people at the bottom, do they really have an option? you know
Yeah.
like they say that, well, yeah, you do have an option, and the option is essentially death or being a fugitive, and they don't choose it because it's not easy. I'm like, how many like it's not that black and white, and when they treat it as black and white, it's nice that you know you have pushback and a conversation about that a little bit, even if it does end up with them just putting their thumb on the scale, or whatever, however you want to put it, when they basically blackmail Fist into doing whatever.
Yeah.
I did have a question though. So we talked a bit about this at length last book about Mary Sue's. Do you think this is a Gary Stew? Why or why not?
A Gary stew.
It's the male Mary Sue.
All right. um, that's a fair question. Um, because like, obviously his character is intended to absolutely excel at the school.
Mhm.
Um and he's good at everything he does. He's good at fighting, he's good at their version of chess, whatever the fuck that was.
Foundation.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, he's good at the labyrinth thing. He's good at not dying when he gets stabbed 20 times. Uh, yeah, I would say based on what I've been saying for the last couple of seconds, yes, he is a Gary. What'd you call it?
Gary Stew
Gary
instead of.
Stew. He's a Gary Stew.
I unfortunately have to agree a little bit. I think the one argument, like, there's a couple arguments you can make against it. In like, one of the things that is a hallmark of a Mary Sue or Gary Stew is that everybody just kind of likes them no matter what. And there is very clearly a contingent of people in this book that don't like him. Um, although he does gain interest and acceptance among a clearly severely caste driven, like like hierarchical system, and he gains attention as somebody from outside the system and acceptance from people near the top, at least among his peers. Now some of that can be attributed to like just the naivety of youth, in that they believe that everything is as meritocratic as the hierarchy wants you to believe it is, when it's really not. um, but the whole point of this school is also the people at the very top are supposedly well versed in the political machinations of those around them, at least to enough to a degree that it's a bit surprising that he gets as much traction as he does as fast as he does. Also, um, the other thing that is there, that would go against that, is that he's got Iroh, who hates him the whole time, uh, because he didn't save his sister. And that's where this is where I believe that doesn't quite hit the mark as to clear him of the Gary Stew thing, is because his reason for hating him is stupid. He's like, oh, you didn't save people fast enough in a crisis where nobody would have saved anybody. Oh, you must be the worst fucking person ever. And I'm like, your reasoning is dumb. I would be more inclined to believe you if you just said, well, he's lowborn. you know,
Yeah.
like, so it does play a bit like that to me. Yeah, so yeah, I think he's a Gary Stew, a bit light, but I think it's acceptable based on other factors in this book.
Yeah. V.S. Drake disagrees with us. He says, I think how he is written, he makes mistakes and many times almost dies. This guy was a prince and was raised like one. I think Islington showed a great way to write a character that is strong with flaws. This is, in my opinion, very Quoth style character where he is hella confident as a and as opposed to Quoth, he knows how to calculate a little better socially. Yeah, I mean, I think there are obvious times where this does poorly, or makes poor decisions and
Mhm,
thinks that he can get away with stuff that he obviously can't. Um, such as like when he fights, what's that girl's name? Lannistia. A lot of the Lannistia scenes,
mhm.
um this is shown to be too egotistical for his good. But what I think still lands him in Mary Sue territory is he is still exceptionally talented, just full of himself a little bit and overly confident.
Yep. And I would also say that to some degree, Voth is a good parallel like genuinely, I think that's a really good parallel to draw. I think Voth is something of a Gary Stew too. It's not inherently a bad thing. It depends on how you treat it. In the same way that like a Chekhov's gun can be very predictable and boring, but there are some where it is very compelling. It's all about how you use the tool. And I will say Islington doesn't go like so far as to make this like untouchable, and that's I think where we start seeing the line blur a little bit between whether he is and not. And again, I think he's like riding that line. He's still a Gary Stew, but I think in a way that fits the narrative of the book, so it's not like something that takes me out of it. But this is why I wanted to bring it up as a subject, is because I do think it is very much could go either way. So again, thank you for bringing in your viewpoint, Via Straight, because it is nice to have the other side get in on that.
Yeah. Mary Sue is someone that just can't fail like Superman. You're having camera fails today, dude.
Yeah, the autofocus is not treating me great.
I think you know, in terms of kind of branching out from the topic and just talking about Vis as a character in general, um, in regards to character growth, I think, something that Vis shows the need for growth in is, um, self-reflection and, um, um, when he does stuff that's exceptionally dangerous and just barely gets away with it, it's a learning experience for his character to be like, maybe I shouldn't do reckless shit and maybe I should, you know, get a little more skill under my belt before I just leap headfirst into things.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think any Mary Sue or Gary Stew faces no obstacle. It's just a matter of when they get into something, is there a reasonable expectation of them to fail that obstacle and fail it to the point of needing, I think, another character to fill in, I think is one of the biggest differences is like we have a character that I don't think at any point 100% needs anybody else to do any given task beyond the you know fact that there's things that require him to have other people, like other bodies, but everything else he seems essentially capable of doing or is
Yeah.
expected to do them. And that's where you start dipping into the Gary Stew, Mary Sue territory. Is there isn't anything where it's explicitly, I am not good at this. I am going to recruit somebody who is good at this and have, or I am with this other person who balances this part of myself out. And there's little instances of it, but like broad strokes, there's nothing I can think of. But I will
Yeah.
say, again, it's not a thing that's a problem. It's just a thing that is there. It's a part of the story. We do have a question though from VS Drake, so why don't we put that one on the board? Is what do we think about the magic system?
Yeah. That's a good question for a fantasy book, obviously. Uh, we get some cool glimpses of different ways that magic functions in this book. Obviously, the big focus in this book is the will magic, that you can take somebody else's will and utilize it to get shit done for yourself. Um, Direct application, more, I guess, the passive application being physical attributes, and then you also have side applications of being able to imbue the will into objects, as well as our alternate magic systems, such as what the Anguis used to kill 30,000 people. And I'd say of all of those, they're all pretty unique and um, something worth exploring. You know, the physical attributes part is obviously the easiest to imagine because it's like, oh, you've got six people seating you, you're as strong as six people. Like makes sense, easy to calculate, easy to keep track of. And then there's like the uh versatility of being able to imbue objects with will, where it's like the author needs something to happen so that he can just pluck magic out of thin air. That's kind of cool. And then there's the mystery of what the heck is going on with this other magic, and especially at the end when Vis gets his own brand of magic, and it's like, oh shit, what's going on here? It's very mystical.
Uh, I agree that it is very mystical, but I also like the fact that this magic system very clearly has laws and rules to it in a way that feels tangible and relatively understandable without having to go into the exact mathematics behind it. But the fact that they study this, they know that there's different means of application, that it has to work in certain ways. It tells me that there's a lot more to learn about the magic system as we go. And personal theory, I think all the magic is related. Like, I think it's all one system. It's just something has been made taboo or is, lost to the cataclysm. Um, Now, I'm telling you my theories based on the first book alone. I have admittedly almost finished the second book, so I have some answers to some things, but I'm telling you my responses as they were when I finished the first book. Um, but my theory as of finishing the first book is it's all a part of one. I think that the magic that we saw um the Anguis use is kind of like a nullification or consolidation, whereas imbue as opposed to imbuing. So what happens when you either what I can't tell is whether or not it's you have this and I'm gonna like overinflate the balloon, or if it's taking it all away and literally ripping them apart as they do it. But there is an element of like cancellation of the use of will that is clearly in there, and I think it has something to do with that. And I think it is all based on will and whatever allows that to be manipulated. Uh, but I actually really like that as a first book, we get to know more and more about this magic system, and for every answer we get, there's another question that's proposed, and it keeps you moving forward with it. Of like, what else is there to know? And it makes the
Yeah,
magic system itself compelling.
yeah, that's fair. I think,
And go ahead.
and I think this book felt more like a setup book for the magic system, where like we got the understanding of the will, and we saw the Anguis use their brand of magic, and at the very end we saw Vis use his brand of magic, and like
Mhm.
we were introduced to it. But for the majority of this book, it's like just want you to know it exists, you know.
Well, I don't think it's just that they just want you to know how it exists. They want you to know how it exists and how it propels the world that they're in specifically. Like, what are the limitations of what it is based on the understanding of the people in that world? And know that there's something more about it, but not everybody knows how or why. We just know about this one thing, and this is our limits of what we know about it. and it's enough to build out the world to understand why they have the level of technology that they do, what their uh, hierarchy is like, both from a social standpoint, like a socio-political standpoint, but also as a magic system, and how those two things interplay. And I think it was a good thing not to get too deep into the weeds about the other stuff because of how much that segment of the magic system sets up for the world that we're in for this book.
Yeah. VS Drake says, I feel like speaking of the magic sapping, I feel like that was what Vis did at the start of the book in the fight. He very clearly stole the dude's power in the pit fight. I definitely missed that. I don't know if I just wasn't paying
Mm.
attention during that scene or what, but
I
is that how you took that too?
no, I thought it was supposed to. This is actually the thing that VS Drake is mentioning is what I took as a sign of Gary Stunis, of like, this is a thing that nobody else does, but somehow a 17-year-old who was nearly beaten to death and is living on like quarter rations or whatever the heck it was can do to men who are stealing the strength of other men, is like, it stretches the bounds of how much skill can overcome power. Like, there's a lot of things that like do work like that where skill can overcome power, but I think the gap between those things gets stretched a lot, and I just thought it was kind of a setup of like, well, he's just so skilled of a fighter that it doesn't matter that magic is involved. I thought it was, I think it might have been something of a setup to show that he had to be that level of in tune to other people and how they move and how they fight and how they, being that in tune is required for his magic later on. Like, I think that is kind of like foresight and setting up his ability to be able to do that innately because he's technically practiced it, a million times or whatever. But I don't
Yeah.
necessarily, I never took it as like he was actually using the magic back then, but that's just me. I could have missed something too.
I was chuckling about VS Drake's comments about not touching the thing and that important for the Katenins to touch the thing. It's just yeah, I think there is definitely something there where foreigners there's probably some inherent indoctrination into the magic system that all of the Katenin populace goes through unknowingly, or at least that's the vibe, and that the foreigners who lived in kingdoms that were taken over by the Katenin Republic didn't go through that, so that they're at a distinct advantage because of whatever they missed out on.
Well, I always thought that that mention was, I think it's the reason why, we've been into this long enough. I don't feel like I'm getting too into spoilers, but like, I assumed that it was very much noted that he was kept out of it because I think whatever happens to Vis at the end of the labyrinth only worked on him the way that it did because he hadn't succumbed to being a part of the hierarchy, because he hadn't touched the thing that none of us can
The
remember the
thingy.
book.
He
the
didn't
thing
touch
that
the thing.
the thing that turns you into one of the octavi, essential, like, the thing that makes you enter the system. I specifically, I don't think he was using it back then, but I do think that it is very specifically set up that like he's the only one who benefits from it running the labyrinth because he's the only one who didn't, uh, or at least that we know for sure hadn't been run through the system. He touched the timeshare. Sorry, that was a good one.
The timeshare.
The will share, as it were. Will call. um, but
Oh my god. I
he
tried to Google it and it did not go well.
well, I think though, like it is mentioned by Quintus when they're talking about joining the academy that this is at an advantage because it said that the Principalis Viridius, I think,
Mhm.
um, he was giving special uh well, like extra, like basically you get extra points if you haven't gone through it yet. So I think that the labyrinth in the why all the training is without willpower and everything is specifically to set up that whoever goes through that has to not have touched will, or it gives you an advantage if you haven't touched it. Aurora Columni, that's the one. Yeah. So if you haven't touched the Aurora Columni or whatever, I think it gives you either a benefit at the end or a benefit in the process of passing through it. Personally, I think it's you only get the full benefits of whatever is at the end that he touched. Although apparently it also makes a bunch of eyeless people try to kill you, which um really stinks because Lannistia, like I'm worried that like she's going to wind up trying to kill him, but not sure how all that works
Yeah.
at that.
I mean, what do you think of the parallel between Lannistia losing her eyes and all of the specters in the ruins not having eyes? Think there's anything there?
So I assumed going into this that there is some kind of rule of three or something go like in the labyrinth of you've got like a spotter, a runner, and the person who moves the walls and you all work together and then you get to the end um and like one person has to like you each have to touch one thing and it you get a certain effect based on like what portion of it is that you get, but then when we get to the end of it it is activated by a single person. So I think there's something going on where whoever built if somebody like runs the labyrinth, if there's anybody else in the labyrinth when somebody runs through it and wins it, because I do think that Kolkiskor's brother, I think Siror, the
Yeah.
one who supposedly killed himself, I think when they run the labyrinth, if there's anybody else in there, they get turned into one of those things. And somehow Siror disrupted that process, so it only partially happened to Lannistia. So like whatever it is didn't like fully grab her brain, but it did get like partway through the process. But I feel like at the end there feels like there has to be something more to it though, because it feels a little unresolved given the end of the book, but I have to assume that's coming in the future
Yeah.
books. So what did you think though?
Yeah, we get that like epilogue scene where Vis is not Vis and he's like in an alternate reality where um Alkistor's brother is alive and is like,
Mhm.
"Hey, we got to write a message on your arm so that you don't die in the alternate reality." And I'm thinking what happened is he got through, got trapped on the other side wherever Vis ends up, and he didn't make it out because he didn't have anybody to warn him on his arm.
Mhm.
But because he was on the other side, he was able to do something to get Lannistia out, but presumably, like you said, she got partway through the transformation before he was able to do something. And yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
could.
I think if she goes across fully, that she'll get her eyesight back and her memories.
Yeah, that was the bit that I couldn't remember for sure if that was epilogue or if it was the beginning of the next book because they do kind of like do that
Yeah.
overlap type of thing. So I wasn't sure about that. But yeah, that was more or less my take from it once I saw that, yeah, freaking plot twist at the end of it's another world. But that kind of
don't
makes sense.
I don't
Like,
feel like it was a plot twist necessarily, because like the
well,
specters were talking the entire time about how this other place was sealed off. Like,
the other big plot twist though. Actually, I'm not sure if this is the second book or not. Did they describe what the person is, what Searoar looks like in the epilogue?
I don't I don't think we get too much of an explanation.
But did they explain his face at all?
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, it does get kind of Sanderson really fast with world hoppers, but this feels more like dimensions, same place, different dimensions, like plane more like plane hopping than world hopping, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of have my thoughts about what like the two locations like the other two worlds like they what are one starts with an L and one starts with a D. Uh
Yeah, I forget.
Lucia and something like that. But like yeah, I have a feeling that each of those worlds has something to do with like a different use of will.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I think that the red one, I think like the planet, I think the one that he winds up with, like Searoar, might have something to do with the weapons that they used uh, to kill all those people, like the weapons the Anguis used, because they call them like pre-cataclysm.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that the cataclysm split the worlds into the like dimensions or planes that they're on used to be all in one, but now it's, each segment gets their own thing, but some things are left over and can still access it or whatever. Lyceum and Obitium. That's
Yeah.
it. So again, really cool bits to like throw in at the end. And I think that's actually something I wanted to talk about, which is how do you think that the author handled the ending of this book? Because it was a lot to throw in at the end, but like how do you think he handled it?
Poorly. No, there's way too much to unpack at the end, and it felt like he was like trying to make a word count or something. Like, oh, I'm over my word count, so I gotta just stop here. Like, there was so much that happened in the last, I assume, 100 pages. And the pacing just like took off at a sprint. You know, like it was like we were strolling along on this nice little road here, and then all of a sudden, like, fuck, there's a bear, you know? uh, it was way, it felt like he definitely was setting up book two at the end. Um, but like, it didn't feel like book one got finished, despite the fact that we hit a climax. Like, um, the Vis's decision about what he wants to do after school because he won and he gets to pick that. Um, it felt like it was just an afterthought, and there was no um closure about any of the other students getting to pick or getting assignments. Um, heck, he doesn't even go and talk to anybody. It's just he wakes up from his 5-day nap, and he chit chats with um, Viridius, and that's pretty much it.
Well, I agree to an I agree that it is rushed. It is, and the page count bit, especially, like I think this was just a he wrote enough to do two books, and then he had to make a decision on where to cut it. Like, and he's just like, but quick, you need to know about these things so that you'll be compelled to read the next bit. And it's tough because it was already a big book, and the second one's even bigger. Um, but it did feel very rushed of like, you guys need to know that it doesn't end here, and that this isn't just the interpersonal stuff that's carrying on. There is the magic system stuff that's carrying on, and I need you to have enough to like be compelled by it. And it felt like a lot was shoved into the end. That said, I don't I don't think ruined is necessarily the word, because specifically vs Drake, it is something that made me want to read more. Is I think it was kind of like a, oh crap, I did what I wanted to for the book one, but I didn't do enough to set up what I really want to do, which is the trilogy, you know. and
Yeah.
and we've seen what that looks like. Again, I I didn't mean to do this like towards the end as well, but like with the last book, I read it, and at the end, I was just like, I know what I need to know about this magic system. I know what I need to know about this world for me to have like a complete story. And I don't necessarily feel like moving on because it can be its own self contained story, and I'm fine with that. Whereas this book, by the end, I'm just like, what the fuck? Must know more. um, and I do think that there is like a well-rounded story, but there is like you said, 100 page-ish part of this book that feels like it is rushed and trying to do too many things at once, both end the book and get you intrigued by the for the next one. When it's something that people like Sanderson do a much better job of like flowing from one to the other most of the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah, I
like
gotta
things that can be improved upon, but I want to say for a guy who rushed it, what a hell of an end, man.
I gotta agree with vs Drake's comment about the ending not being an ending, so to speak, and not fulfilling the feeling of completion. Like the story itself, you know, wasn't about Vis winning the competition. I forget what the competition is called, but
Get the
um,
Eutychium.
yeah, the Yiddikium. Um, it was about him finding out what happened to um, Alkistor's brother, or finding out about what's going on behind the scenes at the school. And I feel like the ending we got piled more onto that, which is kind of an okay thing to do to a story, but it didn't give us any why of what happened at the end.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to putting it. That the plot, which I think through most of this book is actually one of the strengths of this book. It's a very compelling plot of how is this kid going to navigate so many external forces while trying to like uphold his own character and desires for his future, which are already in flux as it is. And at the end, we get kind of like a half resolution of like we get the step before the resolution, and it does feel a bit like literary blue balls. So, and if it weren't for like the twist ending, it would feel even worse about that. Like, so yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think based on what you said, I didn't know how to articulate it before, but thank you, VS Drake and Adam, for helping me find the words for it. Before we wrap things up, though, I did want to ask, can we talk characters a little bit before, like, we've been talking meta on the plot and the world building. Uh, what
Yeah.
did you think of characters, in particular, non-Vis characters?
Yeah.
Side.
So the characters in this book, I think, were the weakest point of the book, specifically because when Vis wasn't around, they didn't do shit. They sat there and waited for Vis to show up to do shit. Um, you know, the only time the Anguist did shit was when Vis was there. The only time military people planned shit was when Vis was in the room to listen in on it. Nobody progressed or dropped in classes except for Vis, and nobody had any sort of intrigue at the school except for Vis, unless Vis was there to see it and do something about it.
Uh, Two potential, and I agree 90-ish%. There are three characters that kind of get a little bit outside of it. What Calidus gets a bit outside of it because we find that like his whole thing with Belly is blackmail and not him having a thing for her, or at least later we find out that that's not what it was, and it kind of is but isn't. Like Calidus, Iden, Iden gets an arc because he goes from punching at Calidus to being like he's seen as like he's set up to be this bully antagonist, but really he was like an unwitting outsider. He does have a little complexity, and he does have some movements outside, like when he quits um the Eutychium because of his own reasons and what he was offered by Viridius. And there is some stuff with Equa because of her losing her spot for trying to prove that Vis is cheating. But those are the exception and not the rule, right? And that's where characters do become, and it stinks because there's a lot of setup for each of these characters, and they make you think that there's going to be a lot more to them. Like Viridius, I was expecting to be a much bigger presence in this book, considering what he's set up to be. And really, he's like, he shows up and he's like, he's charming and handsome and effortless. And I don't trust him. And that's all you get out of him for like 95% of the book that he plays a part in. And it feels like there's a lot left on the table with characters here because, well, one of the reasons why I wanted to give Calidus his props was because his death definitely shed tears at that one. Like, fucking hell, dude.
Yeah.
Damn.
Calidus was a good side character.
Yeah.
He did have the intrigue with the Billy stuff, but then Vis stepped in to be like, this is a different way to advance in a class instead of this exact same way I did it last time, which was proving I'm smarter than everyone else. You know?
Yeah.
um, I what I was looking for is stuff or like if we use Harry Potter as an example.
Mhm.
Um, Harry discovers, or Harry, Ron, and Hermione discover that um, they think Snape is trying to get into the third corridor, and he's doing stuff like he's confronting Quirrell, and Quirrell is going to meet with Hagrid off scene, and we hear about it through interactions with Hagrid. Um, We come into a scene where Snape has gotten his leg chewed off by Fluffy. All that shit happens off scene and we hear about it. Where like in this book, it was like if the camera's not on you, you're standing there waiting for the camera to get on you.
Yeah, and that part I don't disagree with in 90%, like again, 90-95% of cases. There's some things that seem to be moving, but like you said, you really don't see them moving or the effects of it unless Vis is in the scene. There Some of it I chalked up to the fact that this is, isolated setting that is deliberately isolated from information in the outside world, right? So
Yeah.
there's some of that going on. But to your point, even when they do visit the outside world, it does feel like most things have been standing still. You get a bit from the Anguis, but even that stuff seems to pretty much exclusively revolve around Vis. And yeah, I think that's why like the character is it's not bad, like VS Drake said, to the point of it is a distraction, but there is kind of a feeling of wanting more out of these characters because there's a lot of potential in a lot of them. Like even Amisa, his love interest, was one of the when she was on screen was one of the more believable ish characters as far as like what her personality was. It was more than one note, which was nice. Uh, while also making sense of a bunch of teenagers locked up in a school, you know.
Yeah.
um, but any complexity or depth of what was going on off screen, the closest thing we get to anything with her is at the very end, and it's well, why did she stab him a bunch of times in the stomach? And that feels like it comes out of nowhere, and it could potentially be resolved in the coming books as to like why and like what kind of depth does it add to this character, but it felt like plot and world building trumped depth of character in this book.
Yeah.
And that's fine to a degree, but if it's not handled well in the coming books, it could become a problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think you brought Misa up. She's a good example of somebody who um maybe she does have stuff going on behind the scenes that we just don't get to find out about because Vis needs to be kept in the dark about it for plot reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she would be a good exception to the problem that I had with this book is that there's clearly something going on with her, like, oh, she can use will. She apparently got fucking possessed at the end of the book. Uh,
Well,
and
yeah, but it's all limited to that like super accelerated portion of the book. I mean, we
yeah.
get a little bit of it, like kind of when they visit Seuss, but it feels actually like one of the ones that felt like they got a little bit more is uh who is the guy like in the trio that woke up with him at the hospital, the one who's uh the Decimus' son, the one who he thinks he knows the secret, and the secret is that he's moving to a religion, but it's very clearly, even though they don't say it out loud, the fact that he's gay. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
um,
I forget his
but
name, but
that's
yeah.
another character where it's all bunched into this last third of the book, which gives me hope for the future books, but it does feel like the first three quarters, two-thirds of this book, most characters are there to be introduced and to be introduced as a way for Vis to bounce off of them.
Yeah.
And then at the end we start seeing more and more of this. Misa does have some of those. Iden, we get a little bit of it. I mean, Lannistia clearly has some other kind of stuff going on. Like none of these characters are one dimensional, but like you said, there is not a lot going on for a lot of them in the background, and it's hard to tell how much of that is the isolation of setting and how much of it was just not handled necessarily the best.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it, again, vs Drake, you're right. It's uh well, actually, let's see what they have to say. I think characters were well painted, but it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. They like a scene in a play, like it looks good, but you really look at them, you notice it's just met art. Kind of. I think it is characters that are like you get a good idea of what they are, but we also they don't feel like more than place settings sometimes, you know? Like
Hmm.
a painting is actually a canvas is actually a good thing. Is like you get these snapshots of them when we see them, but we only ever see them and what they're doing based on this one point of view, which is Vis's. And a one point of view is not a bad thing, but kind of like what we see in like D&D, the most compelling characters are the ones that do stuff while your main characters are doing stuff.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk final thoughts. We're
All right.
getting pretty late in the night
All right.
here.
I'll start us off with final thoughts then. So ultimately, highly recommend this book to any fantasy lovers because it does have a lot of really compelling components to it, great world building. I think excellent plot up to the bit of a rush point at the end. Um, Intriguing characters, if not the most, they're complex but not deep, I think is what we're getting at. Um, like
Yeah.
the characters make sense, they make for good dynamics. So ultimately I think this is a book that it's a fun read. You have to be willing to devote a fair amount of time to this book, but knowing that there's a second one out and I don't have to wait for it definitely helps. uh, but yeah, I would absolutely recommend this book. It's for all the nitpicking that we did about it, it is one of the better books that I've read in the last like year, not just since we've started this. And there's a very clear voice to this book, which was uh, easy to keep up with for the most part. And again, compelling plot, compelling world building that makes it a fun read.
Yeah. Islington definitely excels at setting the scene. Every single time we transition to a new scene, um, I feel like I'm there. Like just the way he describes it. He puts you in the scene with more than one sense every single time. Um, he gives you that sense of feeling about what it's like to feel like you're there, not just experience being there. Um, I feel like after he sets the scene is where it starts to fall apart a little bit. He's not great at being in a scene, but setting the scene is fantastic. The plot in this story was great. There's a lot of political intrigue that goes on. Um, there's a lot of realistic motivations that happen in this book, and a lot of people not being afraid to be people and not just fill roles. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Uh, I would definitely recommend reading this book. I would have liked to see greater depth of character and more happening in the world behind the scenes. I think this book would have been a great book to break apart into maybe three books. Um, but I'll see how book two goes and see if, there's a reason why Islington felt like getting us all the way through the year at school instead of taking his time to get there. Um, I will definitely read book two. I'm probably going to download it tonight and get started with it because I'm really curious about what's happening behind the scenes, and I think Islington did a fantastic job of making you want to know more about what's going on.
I really like that. I just want to say that bit that you said about people being people is, and that's where I think that there is complexity but not depth to these characters, in the way that like VS Drake says the nice part is uh that there's political intrigue in the book that does not directly mirror modern politics, and they didn't sense a soapbox narrative or grandstanding about current events. And I think part of that is because people are just being people. There's even a quote in the book where Vis is talking about his dad, like his actual dad, uh, uh, the one who did, um, said that when people look at a system and think only the system is at fault, they are fools. And I think this book wants to take a look at what people are like when they're given different structures and motivation. And I think this book does a good job of that. I just, like you said, wish there was a bit more character growth, but absolutely would recommend. And why don't we wrap up then? Because we've been going way too long.
Yeah. Next up, I totally forgot to start copying these already, but next up on the block of reading is a Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. That is for April 11th. Control V. Uh, and then after that, for May 2nd is Storm of Iron by Graham McNeil. Both of these books are going to be new books for me, so continuing the new book saga, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, both new books for me as well. Also, keeping in mind, June is going to be our Pride themes, all things LGBTQI plus, etc. If you have any recommendations, get those to us as soon as we can. But we will be having the vote up for that shortly. And July is going to be our usual beach reads. So if you've got any easy readers that you think are great for lounging at the beach or on vacation, send them our way.
Yeah. Did you got any side pieces? Did you side pieces?
Does book two count? It's called The Strength of
It
the
does
Few.
count. It
I'm
does
about
count.
three. I'm like most of the way through the second book. The third one is not out yet. Womp womp. Um, and I read a bit more. Finished off the first of the Horus Heresy books for you know Warhammer 40K, which the Grim Dark is fucking brutal. Uh, what about you? Side to pieces? It's only been
The only
2 weeks.
side,
So.
yeah, in 2 weeks I fit in The Will of the Many and This Inevitable Ruin, which is a 28-hour book. So I think 60 hours total in the last 2 weeks, which is
I was gonna
way
say you're
more than I
coming up on
normally
like
do.
48-ish was what I was coming up with, but I can't remember exactly how long the inevitable ruin was. But
28 hours for The Will of the Many as well. So
yeah,
both of them are just shy of 30. So
well done then. For 2 weeks, that's pretty wild. Uh, all right.
yeah.
Well,
Plugs?
yep.
Plugs?
Final
Shall we do
thoughts.
plugs? Yes, plugs. There are some links below your video, unless you're watching us on YouTube, in which case there are no links below your video, but you're already on YouTube, so it's probably okay. One of the links is our YouTube channel. We post these on YouTube. You should go check us out on YouTube. We're the DM's Table on YouTube. Um, There you can see all of our previous book talks as well as some other videos. Also, if you would like to experience the cool world of audiobooks, I would highly suggest checking out Audible, which is Amazon's audiobook platform. Head over to dmstable.com/audible for a free trial period. The audiobook world is actually a changing world. These days, it is not like what it used to be. Audiobooks bring a whole new flavor to books. They're not just some old guy reading in the back of a room. Um, it's a whole new way to experience books, and I highly suggest you check it out. If you would like to vote on what book to read next, maybe you should check out our Patreon. We are the DM's Table on Patreon. There you can vote on what book we read next, as well as give us a couple of bucks for some added perks. You should check us out on Patreon. Otherwise, you can chit-chat with us on our socials. We have Facebook and X. We are at the DM's Table on Facebook and at DM's Table on X. And of course, we also have a Discord channel. You can hit us up on our socials for the Discord link if you're really itching to get up close and personal with us. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. You can head over to dmstable.com if you want to learn more about what makes us us. Whew.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this extra long episode. It was always, as always, a treat to be able to chat books with you, and we'll see you next book.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you next book.